And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Happy Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. Welcome back to another episode of 17 and Some Change. I'm EcuDes17, here to bring y'all my 2 cents. Um, so, where do I want to start today? I am recording this podcast a little bit later than typical today. So it's gonna come out a little bit later than typical. Uh, Reasoning behind that is because I was at a training. I was at a training for work. This was a gender affirming care training. Um, as I've said in the past, I I I work in a mental health field, so I deal with individuals in crisis situations, and and some not so crisis situations. Um, so a lot of our clientele, I live in a blue state. Um, Even if I didn't, it is sweltering hot out today, y'all. Even if I didn't live in a blue state, a lot of youth and stuff like that, there's prevalency in this demographic. Um, so we were learning about gender affirming care today, and that's pretty much what our topic's gonna be about on this show. I made sure to take plenty of notes because gender is a hot topic, and so I needed to look at this from two angles, right? One of them is as an employee who is providing a service to the general public um, on the behalf of a company, um, not on not representing myself. I'm not my own representative when I'm at work. Um, and so while I'm at work and in my role, I'm gonna yield to a lot of their suggestions, right? So I had to look at it from both an employee and a citizen slash entrepreneur perspective. As a citizen slash entrepreneur, main slash philosopher, um, I found myself questioning a lot, and which of course is to be expected, as far as I'm concerned, on a subject like this one, on a topic matter like this one, right? Um, last time, last time we spoke, I had said that I needed to um, run off to a different what I called a stinking training. Last week I said I had a stinking training to go to. And I want to take that back because last week's training was about neurodivergence, and we talked a lot about autism. And I learned a decent amount, which maybe I'll go over in another episode here. Um, and Just recently had another training where we learned like different restraints and stuff like that. But that's kind of irrelevant. Um, so yeah, I'll go over kind of what we learned today, what was discussed today, and some of my thoughts on it. Briefly, before I do that, I just wanted to speak on the Superman movie. I did go watch it. Um, I wanted to I wanted to post a review right afterwards, but I ran into some technical difficulties. I may or may not still post a review. It's just basically um 8 minutes of me praising the movie. I thought it was really good. I don't watch movies often, but when I do, um, I can be. It's good to see a good one. I could be a critic. I could be a harsh critic. Um, I thought all the actors played their roles well. Um, Superman. The actor, he played Clark well. He played Superman well, and he grew on me. Um, at first, the first scene, I thought he was just another corny Superman, another bad pick, another kind of emasculated, like just like not hitting the mark type of character, but no, he ended up filling those boots within a couple scenes. Um, he really somehow did a great job changing that first impression. Um, and People talk about the uniform, like he played the role so well. You don't even really notice the uniform that much. Um, you're just kind of captivated by the entirety of the scene. I thought he did a great job. I thought Lois played a good Lois. Thought Lex did a fantastic job. I had always had Michael Rosenbaum as my best Lex Luthor, um, the one from Smallville. That was always my gold standard as far as Lex Luthors were concerned. But this guy played a hell of a psychopath. He played a psychopath really well, and he was a perfect person to cheer against, um, or cheer for. Like I said in my original review, like there was a person in the audience who was a Lex Luthor fan, and I thought at times it was pretty funny to see some of his. There was one particular time when Superman, you know, pulled an Uno card at somewhere in the movie. Um, you could tell it visibly upset this guy, and not that I enjoy people getting upset, but like it's comical when you know fans of supervillains are disappointed that their villain's plot got foiled, right? And so I'm gonna put on the video spoilers, even though that's not really much of a spoiler, saying that at some point in the movie, Superman pulls a reverse Uno on Lex at some point in the movie. I don't think that's much of a spoiler. I'm sure we can expect that. Speaking of expectations, like I said, I've known people in the past who have gotten salty because they expect Superman to be OP, and when he spends a large amount of time getting his ass kicked and eating kryptonite and getting kicked in the head, and getting saved by women and children, and like just getting annihilated all over the place. There's people I've encountered, people that don't like that, that don't think that's what Superman should be like and should be doing. And if you don't really like that, I mean, there's a lot of him getting his ass kicked in this movie. He gets his ass kicked a lot in this movie, but but I think this movie does a really good job in not only swinging the pendulum, but also um, doing it in a way that it comes out equal. So what I mean by that is, like, I've seen Superman movies where Superman just gets his ass kicked like all movie long. And then the pendulum does swing towards the end, and he wins the football game, he wins the battle, he wins the war, he wins the story, he wins the movie, but it wasn't enough time with him on top. There wasn't enough dominance. Here in this movie, they did a really good job of balancing the highs and the lows, and it felt like there was an equal amount of him getting of him being the hammer and him being the nail. And I thought that was really cool. There was some awesome fight scenes, some awesome action scenes. The fight scenes were like how the physics would work if it was physically plausible, and super physically plausible, and Superman was fighting like how somebody would fight if they had Superman type powers, including, overhand swings and chokes and, swingy people around, and, kicks from the backside or whatever. Just momentum based shit. Flowy type momentum, like it just worked. It worked really well. And Anybody who's done martial arts or who's done jujitsu knows what I mean when I'm talking about like combat that just flows. And I mean, and anybody who um watches a lot of like combat and stuff like that. Um Mostly superhero fans in general. I don't know why I specified jujitsu people, but um, and they did a good job of sprinkling the crypto. The dog, he provided good comedic relief, and I think he was sprinkled in there appropriately. I heard um somebody criticized that there was too much comedic relief where they didn't let the emotion sit. I don't think that was the case. I don't think that was the case at all. I think that was they had a nice, like, at least four, like two really stick out, like two like really like emotional ass moments really stick out. And I think that those might kind of go over people's heads a little bit when they're looking back on the movie, because they weren't like, I don't know, they weren't like crescendo scenes. They were build up. They were part of the build up. And twice, and I say part of the build up twice because this movie was very cyclical. It was a lot of like Superman dying and coming back to life and winning and then dying again, and metaphorically, like there was a lot of him just getting buried and then rising out of the ashes and coming back and doing his thing. Um, and so, but I thought the pacing of it was really good, you know. And yeah, I thought it was a very good movie. One of the best movies I've ever seen. Certainly one of the best movies I've seen recently. I'm trying not to have recency bias, as far as like ranking it all time, but like it's a 2 hour and 9 minute movie. Like most of the time on a 2 hour and 9 minute movie, like I'm not. Then again, this theater, like they set you up. Like this theater, they got like recliners and like I was chilling. I was chilling. But no, it was I heard somebody say it was like a 2 hour 9 minute movie, and it could have been 2 hours 15 minutes. It could have been 2 hours 20 minutes, and it would have been fine. It wasn't one of those movies that like just like dragged on. Like it used all those minutes wisely. That's another thing. There's like maybe there's like one scene that I would go use the bathroom during, in retrospect. But like I know a lot of people wouldn't want to miss that scene either. And so outside of that scene, like I can't think of any scenes that are like good to take a break. Like there's no scenes that are like worth missing. You know what I mean? Um it's it's definitely a pause type of movie, or a rewind type of thing, right? You don't want to miss any parts of that one. Like every scene is relevant. Every scene has like something happening. Every scene is like intriguing in its own way, whether it's the actors or like I said, something happens, or um the environment. Like every scene is engaging. It was a masterpiece. It was stunningly good. I think a lot of people were hoping for the movie to be that good, and yeah, and it certainly delivered in my estimation. For sure, we're gonna see like numbers. I don't know how all that stuff works, but like it's been out. I think this is like its first week out. This is its first full week, and I don't know when they deem it, like when they can scale how much of a success it was or not. But as soon as I hear about it, I'm not going to be shocked to hear. I won't be shocked if I hear, yeah, like, yeah, Superman crushes box office, Superman saves DC, Superman back in the mainstream, yada 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 yada. I wouldn't be surprised. You know what I mean? And then how long does that last? I don't know. James Gunn, he did a good job like setting up future things within that movie, and I think Mr. Cornsweat's not the oldest individual ever. Cavill was getting a little bit up there in age, and I think Cornsweat isn't. I could be wrong. I mean, he doesn't look old. I don't have my phone either, but um he's gonna do some more movies and stuff like that, and I think this one was successful, and I think it was worth it, and I might see it a second and a third time. So with all that being said, um we gotta we gotta pivot here we got to do a pivot to gender. Okay, we gotta let's talk about gender a little bit. And I did not rehearse this. I just got back from the training. I have some rudimentary notes, but let me see. There's a few pages here. Let me see kind of what gets stirred up and what's kind of relevant for us to explore, so to speak. And so and the first thing, like right off the bat, just for the record, I did not have great seating in this presentation. I actually had the literal last seat in the back because I was the literal last person to show up. And do not let that be a reflection on my my capabilities as a entrepreneur when you decide to um, follow myself and purchase my products and things like that. But I digress. I was the last person there. I had like the last seat in the back, but I was taking notes. I figured like if I'm gonna be there, like I might as well try to learn something, and at the very least, I have some content. And right off the bat, um, they were like, "Oh, so let's go around the room, and we're all gonna introduce ourselves by our name and our preferred pronouns and where we work." And and I I there was another dude. There was one other dude who didn't do it, who skipped the he him part. And I don't know if I would have been able to be the first that didn't do it, but I was certainly able to be the second that didn't do it. As far as I'm concerned, like if you are a non-binary type of individual and you want to establish your pronouns so that you don't get misgendered and get triggered because of it. Oh, this is one story, but it is insulting to my own intellectual existence to sit there uh, looking the way that I look and sounding the way that I sound and moving the way that I move and have to specify he him, right? It's insulting to my own intelligence wearing having a full beard and having to specify he him, um and um and so I didn't do it. And so I didn't do that. I skipped that. I skipped over that part. Um, and then so it is what it is. You know, they're gonna think I didn't play along. I don't know, word or whatever. It felt very cultish too. You know what I mean? And I don't like the idea of them normalizing everybody in society using that type of language outside of maybe interactions specific interactions, right? They're trying to normalize this language, and it's you're gonna normalize everybody specifying their pronouns. You're catering to marginalized groups in a very large at a very large scale, at a very large scale. Like, this is a large accommodation if we're talking about, yeah, now like everybody's just gonna specify their preferred pronouns indefinitely, like everybody all the time. Like, it's it's not that big of a deal. Why can't you just do it? Like, come on, man. Come on. Like, that it is a lot. That's um so they said the first slide, they said, approach the subject with curiosity, compassion, and openness. And that's, you can't necessarily disagree with that. You know what I mean? It's a good setup if you're trying to brainwash people, but no, like it also reigns true. Like, you want to approach topics with curiosity, compassion, and openness if you can maintain discernment. Um, and then, they said there's no one culture in the USA, and we can argue if that's true or not. If Meaning, like, we know there's various cultures in the USA, but do all those cultures fall under a even larger cultural umbrella, which is American? And some people would hope that's the case, and some people, they don't necessarily care. You know, to some people, it is important to have that overarching national umbrella that all various cultures can still tap into as the reigning law of the land, so to speak. And or just the overarching commonality that unites a society. You can't live with too much division, right? Like, you can't live with individuality is healthy, and you know differences are healthy, and um diversity can certainly be a strength. But with that being said, you need an overarching narrative for your society. Like, I don't care what your culture is, with all due respect, like, you can't just be murdering people. Like, for example, like, this is for example, like, and but like, so we have to have some unifying core beliefs. And yeah, and then I she said, or yeah, she identifies as a she said that she posed the question and then made the claim. She said, which do you think is more common, intersex individuals, or individuals with red hair? And she claims that they're essentially the same. um and that's just to, you know bring more relevancy to to their existence, purely based on like percentages. Because like when a lot of people argue about um gender this and gender that, intersex comes up, and then one side will say, yeah, well, you're talking about intersex, but like really you're talking about 0.1% of the population or whatever small number that they use. And that could be kind of demoralizing for some on the left to be like, or some within that community to be like, oh, you're reducing our example to like a fractional type thing. And so they're trying to like equate it to like pump it up, like no, like just as many people fall into that category as those with red hair. Like, look, we do exist, we exist in numbers. um which is fine. They went over, they showed some pronouns, like what does cisgender mean, what does transgender mean. They went over some pronouns like they and the they and the z and the them, and then just a short list. um they spoke about the third gender individuals or two spirit individuals. Um, they said a good question to ask somebody who calls themselves non-binary is, what does that mean to you? Um, then they did something pretty interesting. They put up on screen a risk assessment map. Okay. Um, in regards to the community, and the the map was the 50 states. It was a map of the United States, and the all the typical Republican states were shown in red, and the typical Democrat states were shown in blue. But they were presenting it as the red states are the threat states. The red states are the existential risk slash threat to states, to and the blue states are the safe states. And it was surreal. It was almost, I I don't know. It was semi political in nature. Um then they were complaining about how the red states, the threat states, the Republican states, were instituting, gender restricting care and anti-trans legislations. Um, they were complaining about legislation that um, it required individuals to use their biological bathrooms as opposed to their identity bathrooms. They were um, um, calling it a systemic attack. One thing they brought up in, I think they said, ultimately they were blaming, they were kind of blaming um, conservatism for negative mental health relating to gender. But one thing that they said is that even in Democrat states, option three is going to be removed from the 988 hotline. Option three does is it allows people within the LGBTQ community to be connected with a representative who is either also amongst the community, a representative who is privy, who is hip, so to speak. And they're getting rid of that. Um, you know, if you're talking about a target population, like I don't necessarily, I mean, they could use that still, but I'm thinking that it's a useful resource, it's a useful tool, it's helpful. There is they went over this later, but there is um it's a useful tool. There is a high rate of suicidality for youth within the community, higher than normal, absolutely 100%. And we'll circle back to that, but I'm thinking that uh, the 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 legislators believe that these types of services do more than support each other. They act as broader activist avenues. I think that's when the right is at the point now where they don't see the community as a community. They see the community as it activism, as like a group of ideologues who aren't just there to support each other, but more are there to change the way of of life in a broader sense of the term. Um, they you know they say that a barrier for them is negative messaging around transgenderism. Um, and that is interesting to hear. Um, Now it makes sense, but it depends on the year, I guess, because in 2020, negative messaging around transgenderism wasn't the case. It was quite the opposite. It was, and they get into like mainstream. Like at some point, they said that they believe that mainstream media, and mainstream entertainment like movies and things of this nature represent trans in a bad or negative light. And I was kind of baffled to hear that. I didn't know, you know, entertainment depicted these individuals negatively. I thought they kind of did the opposite. To be frank, um, and it is terrible that um, it's obviously terrible that they deal with you know a higher rate of suicidality and depression and anxiety and things like that. And they go on to point out um, kind of a matrix. They go on to explain kind of a matrix that they believe contributes to um, these higher rates. Um, and a lot of it points to discrimination and things of that nature. Barriers to care. They also, but yeah, there is something there, right? There is something there. Like, are the higher rates of depression and things of this nature because of you know the cultural um like it's kind of like chicken or the egg. Like you're not like how are we assuming that's the reason? Like it's um I mean, you could say it's obvious. Like if you're getting bullied for something, then and that you're not being accepted for something that you say that you are. um but we know that you know individuals within this community are also present at a higher level in terms of makeup in the mental health community. We know there's a lot of crossover between those who struggle with identity and in general and those who struggle with mental health. And so I'm saying like um you can't just blame the culture. Like you can't just say like, oh, it's because everybody's mean. It's because nobody really understands that they really want to be like the opposite gender. Like I mean, it could be mental health. It could be it because they go on to say a little bit later that all it takes is one person to see them for who they are, for those ideas to disappear, at an astoundingly high rate. And they're conflating that with like see who somebody is as a worthy human, like worthy of love, worthy of respect, like worthy of like autonomy, like I see you, like you're a human, like you deserve everything that a human deserves, like versus no, I see you as Steve or I see you as Samantha. They're conflating these two things. It's like you can see somebody and say like yeah, like, and I'm not talking about and see, this is where we're differentiating again. I'm not talking about in a clinical setting. I'm not talking about in like a, a clinical setting. I'm talking about like on the streets, like um um yeah, I lost my train of thought there. But um see them as a person. I'm sure something will come up that will kind of rub against that point and and have me expanding on it. But they they didn't like Florida's ban on hormonal therapy for children, but the key word is for children. And it's like you can't get a tattoo if you're under 18, and that's a huge identity thing, right? Getting a tattoo is no, in no small part is it identity signaling, you know. But it's like, and the guy who didn't answer he or him at the beginning, he did bring up a question at the end that was steering towards like his question was, oh, I have an individual who's uh basically it was, what do you do if somebody's not seeing any of the potential pitfalls? What do you do? And we're talking about this, you and I, um, Akudez and chat as hypotheticals. Like, what do you do in regards to you know individuals who aren't? I mean, maybe you do nothing. Maybe you don't encounter these types of individuals anyways. Like, maybe you're not having these types of conversations with anybody, but like I'm saying, like maybe it's your brother or something, and so yeah, I mean, went on to talk about how the CDC had removed a lot of their LGBTQ studies. Um, they said that it was a big, complicated subject. Um, She did encourage, she said, I don't expect everybody to be marching in streets or talking to their state representatives, but you can all do your own part. Just a shout out to activism there. Um, yeah, mainstream depicts them badly. Um, you know, they said gender affirming care is an active process. It's uh, we are open to everyone versus we are trans inclusive and gender affirming. Um, these are two different things. Um, they want us to look for affirming caregivers. Um, they gave us some good, um, general rules of thumb when dealing. And this is when now I have to put back on my therapist hat. And because, like I said in a previous episode, it's not my job to, show them the ideological idiosyncrasies surrounding gender theory. Okay. The things that I say about like gender and sex and stuff like that, these are these are philosophical and political observations, trains of thoughts, ideas, etc. Um, but like I've said many times, when it comes to my capacity as a therapist, um, or a mental health worker, I'm gonna, you know, do the things that my administration or my company says is appropriate for the level of for the people that I'm caring for, you know, and nothing that they told me to do with in regards to dealing with individuals who do identify within the community. Like, I'm not opposed to like making them feel good, like in the moment. Like, I'm not opposed to appeasing um their ideas in the moment, but like behind closed doors, I'm gonna say, hey, maybe they're, maybe, um but um behind closed doors, what? Behind closed doors, maybe it's some kind of dysphoria. And a lot of a lot of a lot of people on the left don't like the idea of gender dysphoria. Um and so like professionally it's like affirm and appease, and then behind the closed door, it's not only is it dysphoria, but like I think the bigger thing is it how tied into a anti uh, American ideology is it? right? So how hijacked has the LGBTQ community been by essentially communists? That's what it is. Like, are like, are they commies? And a lot of times they move like it. A lot of times they talk like it. You know, the like gender dysphoria. Were they not just like perverted into dysphoria by Disney or some shit like that? But they, they want, on a healthcare note, they want to, they want you to ask questions in the same tone as you would like everybody else, and that just makes sense. Avoid asking them questions about transgenderism and and their gender isms out of curiosity. So like, don't be like ideologically curious, and so that's why you're asking questions like, oh, I've always wondered, do gay people like really like donut holes, like not like donut holes in their donut holes, like do they really take but but yo, they really told us at one point, like they were like, don't joke, like you can't, because it's a protected class. Like in Massachusetts specifically, like gender identity is a protected class, and I think this was in schools when they were talking about like some of the things in schools. They were like, gender identity is a protected class, or but no, they were talking about workplaces too. They said don't gossip or make jokes about people's gender identity, you know, like ever, because this is the equivalent of making like a black joke as a white person, and um, so so I guess some things are off limits with the left, and that's these are the types of things that they say that is like commie sounding, right? This is the type of ish that like makes it hard to trust um agendas. You know what I mean? Um they also said like they could be scared to admit belonging to or being trans, so you don't want to just like probe and stuff like that. But when they do tell you a gender, you want to use that one consistently. So like if somebody um you know tells you like, yeah, I'm he, then you just want to always do the, you always want to go he. um so not only they said no gossiping or joking about gender identity, she brought up um an anecdote about somebody who had failed to pause Zoom, and they were joking about how like the individual's voice didn't match their body in any way, shape, or form. And they were kind of like laughing about it. And she pointed that out as an example. And she told everybody to hold others accountable. Hold one another accountable. So don't joke about something. And if somebody is, make sure you tell somebody else. And so when I say commie shit, you know what I mean? And it's like this is very promptly and directly address it. Okay. And so this is calmy stuff, right? And limit microaggressions. But so and now we're back to like, okay, client care, which is fine. Limit microaggressions, client care, fine. Real world, what the hell are you talking about? Though, they talk about microaggressions, and like I be using them, I'll like just like looks that I give people that just say like I'm open to talking or I'm not open to talking or whatever. Like the only microaggressions I give are just like looks that tell people to shut up or whatever. But like, I mean, I guess I don't like them either. I mean, I complain about the existence of the term, but I don't particularly like people who are constantly using microaggressions either. Nobody likes somebody who's like slamming the door a little bit too hard to like assert their dominance, or like cutting you off mid sentence to assert their dominance, or like, you know, puffing up their chest and changing their posture. Like, I think some of these qualify as microaggressions. Um, I think. Use neutral language initially. Oh, okay, until you find out, yeah, they don't want you to use gender terminology. Um, limit sir and ma'am, etc., till which is difficult ish for. It's funny because when I was in high school, I played football, and we were taught everything. When you're talking to elders, it's yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and that's just what it is when you're talking to elders, right? And but that's a little bit different. But most of the gay community is, or the trans community, most of the non-binary communities, they're not elders. They're most of them are younger generation, whatever, XYZ. Um, and I'm not trying to belittle them by in any stretch of the imagination. Um, don't take my dismissiveness born out of fatigue to be a reflection on the value that I think they have as individuals. Anybody who's peaceful, anybody who's not like manipulating or hurting or like causing harm, anybody who's minding their own business and being peaceful has like just as much value as anybody else, and like that's just period. And and they want us to like use neutral language, sir, ma'am, troubleshoot software when working with insurance. Basically, like, they use an example like somebody when they're talking to insurances, they kind of stopped asking about like gender to like look up people and stuff like that, because a lot of systems like are getting like cross tangled. Like there's healthcare systems that are doing sex versus gender one way, and then other healthcare providers that are, or insurance providers that are doing sex versus gender the other way. And some people are trying to look up people based on sex or gender, and other people are looking them up based on the other definitions of sex versus gender. And yeah, everybody's doing the hokey pokey there. And supportive families are invaluable. Um, Again, I think you can be supportive of the person while still not being fully supportive of their um, their new identity. Um, and the key word there is fully, right? You're still supporting them in some sense of the term, where it's like you're allowing them to express that, you're allowing them to explore that. And now I'm switching to, like, I'm talking as like if you're a parent or something like that, you're allowing them to express and explore that. And you're voicing that you don't love them any less, and that this is entirely their 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 right to do. And um but it's just not something that you would do, or something that you think is the best, the maybe the best approach. But then you also say, like, you're not an expert on anything, like, as far as um when it comes to, like, what the other person's feeling, and stuff like that. um so they say, this is something I didn't agree with, go figure, but they said that there's no such thing as there's no such thing as impossible families. They want to teach families how to accept um, their LGBTQ members. And so that's what they mean in that regard. Because if you write off a family as impossible, then you can never convert that. And see, and it's like, how much of it is innocent, innocuous, like, let us be and let us think, versus let us grow and link up with every other marginalized group to do some uh, revenge on all the years of systemic oppression that was led by capitalism and straightness and whiteness and maleness and etc. Right? And so you're saying no such thing as impossible families. You're probably saying that so you can stay in the game, as far as, like, because you said you want to teach families instead. And, well, obviously, like, yeah, obviously that helps the individual you're trying to provide care for. Like, yeah, obviously it's better any way you slice it. It's better um for families to be accepting and nice to each other, just like basic human dignity, like, not. And um and then but leave the door open. But to say no such thing as impossible families, I mean, that's saying narcissists are fixable. That's what you're saying. Like, you're saying narcissists can be fixable, and children can and should live with them. Mm. People should live with them and can't live with them. You know, double down. Fearfulness for individual fearfulness. So some families might be afraid for the individual. Some families might be afraid because their family identity lies on religion. She doubled down on the idea that mainstream representation of LGBTQ is negative. I don't know where that's, but maybe I'll look into that. The stages of change in regards to accepting uh, non-binary uh, family members say they should come out to teachers first. Come out to teachers first. Yeah, this is protected class. This is schools, yeah, she's talking in schools here. Gender identity is a protected class in Massachusetts. We don't out they don't out children to parents. So if a child like tells like a teacher or like administrator that they don't feel like that they're gay, or they don't feel like Tim anymore, like they don't think they're in the right body, and that they're feeling like gendery, like a different gender type thing. You don't they don't tell the parents about that. And then I guess this is still a thing. Bathrooms are still available in accordance to gender identity in schools in Massachusetts. I did not know that. And so is sports accessibility. We're still having, biological men compete in biological women's sports, and blue states, red states. It's really kind of kind of amazing. It really is. The minority stress model is what I was referring to earlier, and that's what they're using to explain the higher level of mental health acuity within the LGBTQ community. They're saying it's because minorities are under greater stress in civilization for these 12 reasons: lack of access, discrimination, poverty, etc. Um, I gotta look into this a little bit more. She, they were talking about trauma behaviors, then they were talking about hyper arousal, which is when you're kind of like all over the place, or um hyper aroused versus hypo arousal, um, where you're not really responding much, you're kind of shut down a little bit. And then she pointed out two additional, which I go look into, two additional paradigms to the fight or flight. Because when I first heard it, it was fight or flight. The first time I heard about it in the 90s, it was fight or flight. Um, and then it became, I started learning more, and it became, they started saying fight, flight, or freeze. Um, and now she was saying you can add flop, which is when somebody will kind of become faint. And you can add fawn, which I've seen that one. Fawn, fawn is when they just start agreeing with everything, and they start basically fawning over the triggerer human. And so fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or flop. I don't know if fawn is applicable outside of a um, interpersonal interaction. Um, and I don't know if these are like what level these ideas are recognized at. If it's like just her ideas and her agency, that's or I don't know if she works for our agency or not, but or if she's like an outsider. Uh, try not to section, especially to sex segregated facilities. yeah, and that was kind of that. And I just want to say once again that um the one that it is a complex topic. It is. It maybe it shouldn't have to be, but it or maybe it should. Either way, it has become one. And it's no longer, we're talking about biology, we're talking about psychology, we're talking about language, we're talking about ideology, we're talking about philosophy, we're talking about history, politics, all sociology, all when we speak on gender. At one point, and so that now, and at one point, we were just talking about biology when we spoke on gender. Um, but now we're speaking on at least those, whatever it was, 7 or 8 things. So, plus, I'm sure there's maybe a couple I missed, but that one ran pretty long. That was an hour and 16 minutes. This video, and I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend and your next few days after that. And I'll be back same time. Well, not same time, but yeah, same time, same channel. Unless your boy gets banned, but outside of that, um, we good. I'll be here. All right. Goodbye.